Tonight, Palace apology. Number 10 says sorry after the latest boozy party revelations, held just hours before the Queen sat alone at her husband's funeral.
Also making the headlines, the US fugitive who faked his own death and turned up in the COVID ward of a Glasgow hospital. Darkness falls, Gotham City comes to Glasgow. I'm John Mackay in Glasgow.
And I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. It was one of the defining images of lockdown last year, the Queen sitting alone at the funeral of her husband, Prince Philip. However, it has emerged that hours earlier, Downing Street staff held two parties at number 10 in breach of COVID regulations.
Downing Street has apologised to Buckingham Palace after the gatherings were reported in the Daily Telegraph newspaper. The Prime Minister was not at either party, but the revelations have amplified calls for him to quit. Our political correspondent Ewan Petrie reports.
Isolated, set apart from her family, mourning the loss of her husband. The Queen cut a solitary figure in one of the most striking images of lockdown last year. The night before, advisers and civil servants held two leaving events at Downing Street. The Daily Telegraph reported music and dancing, with one staff member sent to a shop with a suitcase to buy wine. This morning, Downing Street apologised to the Queen, saying it was deeply regrettable this took place at a time of national mourning.
Mr. Speaker, I want to apologise.
However, senior Conservatives say the Prime Minister's own apology on Wednesday should draw a line under the matter.
He has apologised. I think we now need to move on and talk about how we are going to sort out issues. I've spent the last 24 hours with the EU talking about sorting out the situation for the people of Northern Ireland.
Last April, Scotland was in level 4 restrictions. Restaurants, bars and cafes were closed. Only essential shops were open and only 2 households could meet outdoors.
Hi, how you doing?
In the week of these parties, Police Scotland issued 237 fines for breaking COVID laws. The latest revelations have further angered those who stuck to the rules.
You only get one chance to do a funeral and they'll never get a chance to do that ever again. And so they have to live knowing that they made sacrifices for the greater good of the country, and knowing that not everybody was sticking to those rules is going to be really difficult.
This week, Conservative MSPs backed calls for the Prime Minister to quit, raising questions once again over whether the party here should break free.
I don't actually think talking of splitting up or breaking away is helpful or adds anything to the debate at this stage. I think what we're hoping is that our colleagues elsewhere in the United Kingdom will follow the lead of the Scottish Conservatives and ensure that the Prime Minister does the right thing.
The Prime Minister is currently limiting social contact after a family member tested positive. He is urging MPs to await the outcome of an inquiry by a senior civil servant, which could report next week. That's assuming no more parties emerge to investigate. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
Now for a story which is making headlines on both sides of the Atlantic. A man who faked his death to evade sexual assault charges and was arrested in hospital in Glasgow, where he was being treated for COVID. Extradition proceedings are now underway against the 34-year-old, who went by several aliases and is wanted in connection with a number of offences in 2 different states. Here's our chief reporter, Sharon Frew.
An online obituary to a man who was known as a prominence campaigner for child welfare reforms in Rhode Island. It states Nicholas Alaverdian died of cancer and his remains were scattered at sea. It even quotes his last words, "Fear not and run towards the bliss of the sun." Now that tribute includes this amendment. 2 years after his supposed death, Alaverdian, who also went by the name Nicholas Rossi, has been discovered alive and not so well here at Glasgow's flagship hospital, where he was treated for COVID. This is how events are being reported in the United States.
Target 12 is working new details on a case that is making international headlines.
As Rhode Island man authorities say faked his own death was apprehended alive in Scotland.
Court records unsealed just today in Utah reveal stunning new information.
Nicholas Alaverdian had nearly everyone fooled, including his own uncle.
I'm shocked. In all honesty, I feel like I was used a little bit.
Nicholas was a page at the State House, and then he went on to become a legislative aide, and that's where I got to know him. He was a fine young man. I was told this morning it was on national news, and it would be very interesting just to kind of have a clear understanding as to how it got to this point, why it got to this point, what's the reasoning behind it, and to learn that.
Prosecutors believe this man used at least 8 different aliases. They say he's been charged with 1 count of rape in Utah in 2008 and is wanted in connection with a sex attack in Ohio 10 years later. The FBI is also investigating allegations of fraud. Police Scotland arrested a 34-year-old man on the 13th of December under an international arrest warrant. The Crown Office confirmed that 10 days later, on the 23rd of December, a man named Arthur Knight appeared via video link from the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital. This was for a virtual court hearing in connection with extradition proceedings. Prosecutors in Utah say now their suspect is in custody. Officials are working with federal and international agencies to bring him back to the United States. Sharon Frew, STV News.
There's cautious optimism tonight that better times may not be too far off as Scotland moves through the current wave of coronavirus. The Health Secretary says the outbreak appears to be slowing.
And one of the country's top virologists has told us it will not go on for much longer. In the short term, though, some businesses are continuing to pay the price. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
The Peace Box Cafe in Edinburgh's Polwarth has been served up a tough time. COVID restrictions killed custom in what should have been a busy December. Trade is still slow this week. The owner had hoped financial support being put on the table would help, but having been told eligible businesses would be contacted, she's yet to hear anything.
Having all the restrictions in place in December meant that nobody's now got the money really to fund their way through January. And having sort of been promised these grants and now at the 11th hour still haven't had no contact about the grants, then where are we at?
Audrey told me that's making life extremely difficult.
You have to feel like, and sadly, all politicians of all parties, this isn't political, of all parties, don't really understand the stresses and strains that any business owner's under. I've got 8 staff who I need to pay next Friday. It's a worry.
The issue was raised by the Scottish Conservative leader at First Minister's Questions yesterday. He said payments weren't being made quickly enough. Nicola Sturgeon told Douglas Ross the vast majority of businesses who'd previously received support had already been contacted this time round. While hospitality has suffered as an in-person experience, some sectors have managed to expand during the pandemic. This Printers in Glasgow has run up an order book across the country.
We had such an exceptional 5 months at the end of last year, and we brought on so many new clients. We've diversified slightly in that we take all our orders online now. We don't really accept walk-ins, which for being a shop on a busy high street in Glasgow is quite unheard of. And if you'd said that to us a few years before COVID, we would have thought that was crazy.
As COVID and its wider effects continues to put pressure on the health service, NHS24 opened a new call centre in Dundee today, increasing its capacity for dealing with people needing help. And the Health Secretary was sounding a positive note.
We're still seeing increases in hospital admissions with COVID, but they're definitely slowing down. The numbers of daily cases, there's a bit of instability with the data because, of course, we've had that new case definition, as you know, so the data needs a few more days to catch up. But certainly the evidence seems to suggest that we're turning that corner.
It will not go on for much longer. And if we look at South Africa, we see that the numbers declined very quickly after the peak. Scotland as a whole seems to have already reached that, obviously, especially the Central Belt. And it's unlikely that we're going to see the same spikes in the north just because population density is much lower in most places.
Just under 10,000 new cases recorded today. That's again down on where we were a week ago. Gordon Cree, STV News, Edinburgh.
Now, just under 2 months ago, the gale force winds of Storm Arwen blasted across Scotland, cutting off power lines, destroying buildings and damaging millions of trees. Down the east coast, communities have been reflecting on the impact of the storm as the clear-up continues. Laura Piper has this report.
Lifeboat crews are used to operating in harsh weather, but for this team in Dunbar, the sheer strength of Storm Arwen was the worst they've faced.
Yeah, it was devastating, to be honest. I've never seen weather like that in my life, as long as I've lived here, you know. Swell, wind, waves. We came along that day and the waves were hitting the wall and probably going 100 feet in the air. And the time you stepped out your car at the station there, you were soaked to the skin with just one wave, you know. So, yeah, it was horrendous.
3 people died after being hit by falling trees during the storm last November, which caused widespread damage.
When Storm Arwen hit, winds gusted in at as much as 98 miles per hour in parts of the UK. Here in Scotland, it was much of the east coast that bore the brunt of the damage.
We live along Castle Street and it was like a wind tunnel. And it was fortunate that most people had the good sense to stay in.
So at school, a bit fell off the roof.
The next morning, me and my pal Gail and her daughter Kyla went and walked the dogs at the John Muir Woods, and basically the entire forest was flattened.
The storm tore a path of destruction through the John Muir Country Park.
I mean, I've never experienced wind like that. For me, it looked like a hurricane you would see on American TV shows. And you could just see, you know, all the trees were like matchsticks, the whole forest. You know, it looked like probably 80% or more of the trees were down. It was just a couple of trees left around the perimeter.
Around 8 million trees in Scotland were damaged or uprooted during the storm. Today, Prince Charles was in Aberdeenshire to survey the clear-up taking place there. Haddo House lost thousands of trees.
He was visibly shocked as we went round. The long avenues here at Haddo have been devastated.
As climate change continues to be a threat, increases in severe weather events like Arwen are expected in Scotland. With nearly 4,000 hectares of woodland impacted by this storm alone, forestry experts say the landscape could take decades to recover. Laura Piper, STV News.
A man living in Fife who was left brain damaged and visually impaired after suffering from 2 strokes is urging others to take their health seriously in order to reduce their risk of going through what he has.
Today marks Stroke Prevention Day, and according to the Stroke Association, 9 out of 10 survivors in Scotland say they wish they could go back in time to make lifestyle changes which may have prevented their stroke. Our reporter Indigo Stafford has more.
Jay was only in his 40s when he suffered from 2 strokes just months apart. Like the majority of survivors, he hadn't realised his lifestyle choices made him high risk.
I didn't pay any attention to what I was eating, a lot of takeaways, loads of junk food. Whenever the first stroke happened, I was on a video call with a friend from Wales, and my speech went really slurred. You would have thought I was out drinking all day. After the second stroke, I hit rock bottom. I'd lost everything that I loved. My fiancée had passed away 6 months earlier. After the second stroke, my family couldn't accept how the stroke had left me because I was a totally different person.
Stroke survivors set out a list of the main lifestyle changes they wish they could go back and ask their younger selves to make. The main factors being to manage their stress and monitor their blood pressure, as well as eating more healthily and maintaining their weight through exercise. Other changes include having a number of alcohol-free days each week, stopping smoking and reducing their salt intake.
There's a particular situation in Scotland around risks of having a stroke, and actually the incidence of people having strokes in Scotland is higher than in the rest of the UK. And Stroke Prevention Day is all about having a conversation about the things we can do to reduce our own individual risk of having a stroke.
Just over 3 years after his strokes, Jay has committed to living a healthier lifestyle. Despite his sight loss, he has managed to become an international sportsman.
I got a message saying that I'd been selected to play. I was selected to play for Northern Ireland at the World Disability Darts Association World Cup and World Championships. So there was me, 47 years old, going to represent Northern Ireland at the World Cup.
With as many as 9 out of 10 strokes thought to be preventable, Jay wants to encourage us all to make small changes that we could be thanking ourselves for in the future. Indigo Stafford, STV News.
Now, the introduction of new parking permits at the Royal Edinburgh Infirmary has sparked a row, with staff saying they face lengthy commutes as a result. From Monday, staff will only be able to park on site if they've been issued a pass. They say the alternative options provided by NHS Lothian don't meet their needs and cause concern for their safety. Ivana Holland has the story.
During the pandemic, parking fees were scrapped for staff. And with lower footfall, finding a space was less of a problem. But now, with patients returning to the RIE, NHS Lothian has taken the decision to reintroduce permits for staff, citing health and safety concerns on site.
We had tailbacks of traffic onto Dalkeith Road. We were concerned. We had a number of near misses, and we had 3 accidents, one involving a blue light ambulance, and that really required us to think, what alternatives could we put in place?
There are 1,100 spaces here at 2C, but over 3,000 applications for a permit. Staff say they're frustrated those haven't been processed yet. NHS Lothian says it's online to complete notification by the end of today. A 12-week shuttle bus pilot programme is being run from here at Shawfer Park and Ride. But staff say they're concerned for their safety if they're forced to walk back to their cars. They're also questioning the logic of a shuttle bus over car sharing.
NHS Lothian says Scottish Government guidance and infection prevention protocol prevents car sharing at this time.
I've spoken with a nurse, and her example is that she starts work at 7:30 in the morning, and with the shuttle buses that have been put on by NHS Lothian, she has to leave home at 5:30 in the morning. Is that reasonable?
There is no easy solutions to this. We tried to focus in on the maximum impact this shuttle would have, and 12-hour shifts, essentially 7:30 is finishing time. So we've tried to match it against that, but we are monitoring the utilisation.
NHS Lothian says it's in consultation with staff and agencies to address the ongoing issues. Ivana Holland, STV News.
Well, the big question, how is the weekend weather looking? Let's get the details from Sean.
Well, once again, for many of us, it's been rather damp and cloudy, especially in the west. The best of the brightness today in the east of the country. Tomorrow, not much change in the weather. A wee bit of a change on Sunday. Temperatures generally still staying above average, but we've got quite a big change in our weather coming in next week. Let's have a look and find out what it is.
The outlook for the day is calm and settled. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, of course, this week we've had some crazy temperatures at times. I know it hasn't felt like it in the breeze, but very, very mild thanks to that southerly airflow. However, that does change to a northwesterly as we go into the weekend. Temperatures coming back down to roughly where they should be for the time of year before those crazy numbers return into next week as we start to pick up that southerly airflow. Temperatures back up to about 10 or 11 degrees Tuesday and Wednesday before much colder weather comes in later next week. We'll have a look at that in a second. Now, tonight I popped the cloud layer on for you. It just gives you a better idea of where we're going to see the best of the breaks. For many of us, we hang on to a lot of cloud tonight, but the best of the breaks, eastern parts of Fife, East Lothian, eastern borders, and temperatures perhaps just about low enough for a wee touch of frost in the borders, 2 or 3 degrees, slightly down on the last couple of nights. So tomorrow, well, you can see that pesky clouds still remaining with most of us. A southwesterly. The thickest cloud will be across Edinburgh, West Lothian, Lanarkshire. Some shout-out breaks of rain, the best of any brighter weather. East Lothian, northeastern parts of Fife, where we did pretty well the other day. Temperatures 5 or 6 degrees closer to where they should be at this time of year. Now, we will see some rain coming in from the north during tomorrow night. That clears away southwards, and then we should go into brighter skies on Sunday, although it will be rather breezy. So we see those higher temperatures returning, as I mentioned, Tuesday and Wednesday, along with that cloud, but then we see the sunshine returning later next week, but also turning quite a bit chillier too. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, as Glasgow city centre continues to provide the backdrop for the movie Batgirl, late night filming has been taking place. Last night, a Christmas market in the city's Trongate was at the heart of the latest shoot.
From American cars to liquor stores and diners, we sent our very own Bat Boyd on a mission to unearth Glasgow in all its Gotham City glory.
Bat Boyd. Minus the lycra catsuit and cat ears, thankfully, and instead wrapped up against the elements appropriately, as filming for the latest Batgirl movie continued, and the Trongate was transformed into a snowy Christmas wonderland, complete with Gotham taxis, police cars, and a bustling market. Filming carried on late into the night, with hundreds of crew members working to perfect Gotham's gritty, smoky setting. While Batgirl herself, Leslie Grace, appeared to be making her way into a graffiti-covered building at Glasgow Cross, with director Adil El Arbi ensuring he captured all the drama of the moment. Even from a distance, it's quite a sight to behold.
As Glasgow glistens in the twinkling lights and fake snow as Gotham, these passers-by that we spoke to were certainly embracing the city being in the spotlight.
I live near this place and seeing like my city turn into Gotham City is very exciting.
Yeah.
Especially seeing this when technology's car and all the plates are Gotham, it's something else. And I'm a big Batman fan, so I'm really excited for this thing. I totally geeked out.
I walked in this morning with we've got Bat Dog here. My dog's quite like kind of Batwoman, so to speak. And no, look, it's great. I think it's great for the economy. It's great for Glasgow. It's great for the profile of Scotland and Glasgow. And the more big film and industry that comes to this country, I think the better it is.
A lot of films have been, as you said, have been done here. World War Z, like Batman, the new Batman movie as well, and then Batgirl. It's cool that they're doing all of that here. It's obviously going to be a boost to the economy of Scotland as well, and might get a couple of new successful Scottish actors out of it.
You know, outside of London, Liverpool at the moment is the most used film city, but Glasgow's really gearing up. It's very cooperative. It's a very friendly city. Things like Batgirl put the word out there that Glasgow is open for the movie business.
And Batgirl's reign will continue to take hold, with crashed car props appearing in Glasgow's Botanic Gardens and Parnay Street's shop fronts given a movie makeover too.
Well, all the signs of Gotham are really creeping in now, and for the coming days, at least the Trongate will remain transformed. Me, well for now, I'm off for a fried egg in the hope of bumping into Batgirl. Laura Boyd, STV News.
A fried egg at night? Do they not have kebabs in Gotham City?
I know, that's Friday night fodder for sure, surely.
You'd know, Kellyanne, but we'll leave that one there. From all of us, thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.
Good night.